Hi, welcome to Herd Nerds. For today's podcast, we have the privilege of welcoming a remarkable individual whose journey from a successful financial advisor to a dedicated Wagyu business entrepreneur is nothing short of inspiring. He's a data-driven visionary with a keen eye for genetics. In 2020, his path intersected with the cutting-edge world of estimated breeding values, EBVs, from Australia. He is going to help us understand everything we want to know about EBVs, and I'm going to press him for information on top sires and dams going into 2024. I am honored to have a guest who has a deep appreciation for the science of genetics. Join me in welcoming Kenny Landgraf from Landgraf Ranch at Walnut Creek. Hey, Kenny.
Hi, Desi. Thanks for having me on today. It's an honor.
So great you're here because your information, I know everybody listening and watching is just going to go back, and I want to let everybody know you can go back and read our transcripts because Kenny's got so much great information and we're all going to want to use it in our programs. So Kenny, I'm just going to turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Desi. I wanted to thank you, and it's an honor to be here today. We have a Wagyu ranch located outside of Austin, Texas. I spent 25 years as a financial advisor, so I kind of come at this a little bit different. We have Landgraf Ranch at Walnut Creek, which is quote unquote my ranch. And then we have a genetic company, Landgraf Ranch Cattle. We focus primarily on the blacks. I do have a limited or a small line of polled, and so we might want to touch on that. My focus has been more on the front side in genetics and a little bit less on the consumer side. But ultimately, everybody is breeding for beef. I look, as we go into 2024, I look to get a little bit more on the beef side. And I think all breeders need to give and, look at the amount and the quality bulls being bred in the U.S. Certainly need to look at that. The vector point, as you shared, was in 2020, where I started looking at the Australian EBVs. And I kind of equated, when you're going through the airport and you're walking, you're going from one terminal to the next. It's that moving, walk path. So as you get on, you actually have to walk, but you do move faster. And so that's what I equate
yes,
EBVs to.
I'm really excited for you to tell everybody, all about these EBVs.
So we wanted to talk today about maybe some of the trends as we get into 2024. And my vector change started in 2020 as I started to look what Australia was doing and the science that they were using on EBVs. So that's been going on a couple years, and it's getting adopted by breeders here in the U.S. I did have a chart that I wanted to share. So I think this is a great place to start in terms of what's happening. What Australia did, they had EBVs through 2018, but in I think 2019 and 2020, they created a couple selection indexes. At that time, back in 2018, there were only about 3% of the members that were from the United States or Canada. And as I said, in 2020, that's when I kind of got my eyes opened and started to look at that. What we've seen in the last few years is just really a global acceptance of that that way to look at Wagyu and the herds. And so a lot of the leading breeders in the U.S. have gone to that and looked at that. And so that actually today makes up about 23% of the membership of that association, with another 13%, international members. So it's really being accepted on a world level, both here in the U.S., Canada, and around the world. So it's certainly something we need to be aware of, and it's really how I make my decisions and a lot of questions that I get with the people and breeders that I work with.
So, Kenny, the benefit is that when you look at this and you start checking the charts, you could actually purchase semen from anywhere in the world to fit your program. Is that why you feel it's most important globally to share that information and to be able to exchange our genetics globally?
Well, that's right. So if you're buying animals, let's start on the sire side. So you can buy. You don't have to own the top bull in the world, but you can buy those genetics. So then the question becomes, well, which genetic should I use? And so then you have to go through. You have to have some decision making process to go through that says, well, what am I going to use? We had the original bulls that came in from Japan, in the late 70s, and then the Takeda brought in another whole set of bulls in the 90s. But from there's been a lot of breeding. So that the breeder has to go back and say, well, what sire should I be using, or should I be using my herd bull? And so with science and genomics, then you could actually go in and say, for these various reasons, for these factors, because of the data, because of the DNA, these are, one sire or one bull is better than the other.
So, from all of this, you can tell us a little bit about who the genomic super sires are. Can you do that?
Yeah.
I
So
want to know.
go over to the Australian system, and really it's been prolific. We had the original sires, but really in the last several years, then there's been a couple, I would say, what you'd say second, third generation super sires, and that would include Sumo, which is out of Australia. Their F-150 Michifuku F-154. They've had several very influential sires, including G113. Michifuku 126, which is the sire of United. And then at a Miura station, you could say Itashiganami Jr., which created L10, Miura L10. Miura L10 was the hottest bull and probably one of the most influential sires in North America in 2021, 2022. You're going to see him in a lot of the pedigrees today.
So, from these sires, how many progeny? What are the numbers on their progeny for us to gain this information?
So on the sires, there is some proven data behind that. And so what happens once you have proven data behind that, then you have higher accuracy of what they really are. So for example, let's start with Sumo F-154, almost 2,000 progeny worldwide. So you say, what he's producing. It's not just a guess. Miura Itashiganami Jr., almost 3,000 progeny. And of that, Miura L10, which most top breeders, I would say in North America, are going to have L10. Even today, he has almost 1,500 progeny. It's interesting today, even I looked up Arubio United, he's up to 2,600 progeny. So there's a lot of data behind the numbers and the EBVs that are out there.
And just so you know, I have actually started seeing carcasses from my Miura in our Triple Crown Steak Challenge. So it's been a couple of years, and they are starting to harvest steers out of these top genetics. So we are really going to get some great information from the carcass grading on these animals as well.
Right.
So, Kenny, can you walk me through how to make a sire selection so people can understand what we need to do in order to pick out a sire?
Okay, so that's a good question. How do I select top sires? So the question I'm trying to answer is what are some of the best options out there that I could use for my herd. Now, every herd's different, every female is different, and what I like to say is, what is a female's weakness, and what can I do, or what can I add to her to improve her? So that's understanding what she is, and then understanding what's available out there. So this is off the Australian site, and I come in there and I select EBV inquiry, right? And so there's a lot of fields, and
yes.
So it's a little bit confusing, but what I do is I want to come down to the selection area right in here, and I want to select. And normally you would think I would select males, but the reason why I don't want to select males initially is you're going to get everything that was born in the last, let's say you can get calves that are a few months old or just born or just came in the database. So we don't want to select that. I want to kind of filter those out, because I want to say what has semen and what is it available. So if I cut down to sire, that means there's proven progeny, there's proven semen there already, most likely. Then the question is it in Australia? Is it in the US? And then we kind of go from there. So I select sire, and then I'll come all the way down. And this is a very powerful search tool. I'll come down and I'll set a minimum criteria. So part of that is understanding the grid, what some of the top percentiles are, but we're going to just say, I want to know the top sires that have at least a minimum of a 300 SRI, and that's going to get us into top 1%. Then the next thing I do is I want to sort it based on self-replacement index. There are 4 selection indexes that are out there: WBI, SRI, full blood terminal index, F1 index. And these are different indexes based upon what your goals are, but just a general balanced maternal traits, size, marbling. I generally use these 2, SRI. So we'll use, for this example, we'll use SRI, and then I'm going to do search. And that's going to give us a list of sires, and it's going to be ranked by that selected index. And I'm going to expand this out a little bit so we can see it a little bit better. But in this column, whatever I decided to search by, it's going to be sorted by that order. Initially, it's going to show you 10 options for that selection.
Kenny, does it rank them from top to bottom, or are they in a numerical ranking order, or are they just by alphabet, or how are they? How does it come up?
Go back here. So look here, sort by. I sorted by self-replacing, and I said default, but I wanted the highest number first, so I wanted to see.
Okay, good.
Okay.
I want everybody to understand that, because that SRI, the self-replacing index, you is a numerical sort from top to bottom.
Right. And you could select by, sort by marble scores, carcass size. There's a lot of options, very powerful. But for this example, we'll just select by here, and it's gonna show the best at the top. And then initially it's gonna just gonna show us the top 10. Now,
and that SRI is going to show the best in all the top in all the categories, correct? The ones that come out
for that index.
For the index. Mm-hmm.
Right. And keep in mind, there's 4 different indexes. So the way I would look at this, WBI is very much more size influenced. There's not as much a marbling. I like SRI and full blood terminal index. F1 index kind of leaves out the maternal, and we'll talk about the maternal later, but it's not looking really at milk and some of the other. So if you're just looking for, let's say, to produce F1 carcasses or F2 carcasses, you would look at FTI. So this is where we start. And then you could further sort by here. Once you're in here, you could change whatever you wanted to sort. So what this shows us is based on SRI. Well, let me come back here. It says December run 2. Now breed planning is updating twice a month, and they'll usually update the first week of the month and then the third week of the month. Okay, so around the 15th. And so then we won't get another update. It'll roll to January right there on the first of the year. Okay. And when those change, when that runs, then all these numbers will change. Not drastically, but they will change. The other thing to look in here, so you're seeing for all these measures what the characteristics are. You can see what all their characteristic gestation length, 200, 400, 600, and then it gets into carcass weight, eye muscle. I think the four profit drivers in here are carcass weight, which is a derivative of size, eye muscle area, marble score, marble fineness. To me, those are the four most important. Okay. Then from here, these are ranked from top to bottom. Now, from there, it doesn't mean that you could get this semen. You do see a lot of Rubial names in here, and then you can scroll through. So you can go next. So that'll get you to, let's say, this is 11 through 20, and you can scroll from there. I'm going to stay back at the top. The other thing that I want to show you is, so what do all these numbers mean? So EBVs are relative numbers. They're not absolute numbers. And then the other thing to understand is we have an average here. That's breed average for 2021. Okay. So we're comparing to 2021. When we get to January, the second part of January, when they run January 2, this is going to flip, and it's going to flip to 2022. So remember, we're comparing back, and as the breeding is improving, this shows you what average is, and we'll talk about this a little bit later. But average SRI, the 50th percentile is a 164. So if you look at your herd and you have a sire that's 164, that's considered average for 2021 calves. If you do nothing, as you go a year from now, it's not even going to be average anymore. Okay. They show you the 2021 numbers here, and that's for all animals. It's heavily influenced, or it's greater influence by the sires than the dams. Okay. The other thing that's important for this on this screen is to understand the playing field. It says, well, what makes a top 1% sire or a top 5% sire, so forth. And I come down here and I look at these breed average EBVs for 2021. Okay. And I call this to understand the playing field. That's saying, where am I when I'm looking at an existing animal or I'm looking at a sire? What does it take to be, let's say, a top 5% animal? Okay, so on SRI today, you have to have a 264 to be top 5%. To top 10% would be a 240%. So it's just understanding where you are relative to the 2021. And like I said, these update twice a month, first week and then the third week. Okay, so from here, these would be the sires. Then the question becomes, can you get this information? Can you get the semen on this? So I can tell you, you can get United, you can get Rhyme, Macquarie, you can't get that semen. So often I'll get these questions, hey, what about, bull XYZ? Well, great, but you can't get it. Or it's in Australia. So that's kind of the initial how do we go about selecting sires? And then from there, then you can go, kind of go off to what is it that you're trying to do? What number are you trying to breed for? Okay. So that's top sires in the world. You could also come back and say, within the United States, I want to know what are the top sires. And so you could get country specific. So for example, if you said country only in the United States, what are the top sires? And of course, we've been behind. Most of the breeders didn't start using, like myself, until 2020. So we don't have the number, the quantity. And you can actually see today there's only there's only 6 sires in United States. I'm sorry, 4 sires in United States today that would be considered top 1%, and all those came out of the M6 program.
So, Kenny, I have a question. Are the original sires all in the EBVs?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm going to say they should be. Most everything on the original foundation animals, they are going to be in there. And there's we looked at this tool, but there's a lot of ways to go about and select it. But I'm just going to select. I'm going to use a bull that many people are familiar with today, which is a Rubio Bond, which has been very influential, high marbling. But Bond is basically he's a double bred junior bull. So that's his animal ID. I'm gonna just search on that bull. And I didn't cover this in the last thing, but if you just select on that, then it brings you into the detail information for that particular bull. And we can see all the information, what is recessive conditions, we can see his prefecture analysis, so forth right in here. But then we see the pedigree. And then so once we see the pedigree, there you see the originals. This is the TF 148 bull right there, Itashiganami, and actually Bond is a double TF 148. You see him on the sire side, you see him on the dam side as well. You see World K, Sanjiro, you see Michifuku. So as you drill down, you're going to get to those. And if we want to look at Itashiganami, that would just drill down to what his EBVs are. Tremendous amount of information on that sire with 7,584 progeny. We can see exactly all those, what their EBVs are and their indexes. I think, through EBVs and making informed breeding decisions, it's allowed you to improve on those animals with the animals today. And I think a Rubio Bond is kind of a perfect example of that, where, high marbling and some size there. So it is a greater TF 148 than maybe the original animal himself.
Is Shiga Shigatani a top bull in the herd indexes as well?
He's very he is one of the top. Some would say maybe the top U.S. foundation bull, and you see him in one of the top 1% sires, Mr. Marble. I'll bring him up. 0483, which is he's a Shigashigatani son. Shigashigatani is a high marble bull, and so again, I use Mr. Marble in this example, and let's see, it takes a second to come up. But we can see, so here is World K Shigashigatani, right? He is the sire of Mr. Marble, and we have incorporated Mr. Marble into our herd, which is basically a Shigashigatani derivative. And then let's click down on here. We can see the information on that particular bull, and a top marbling bull, top eye muscle, very, very influential bull with, and then you can see the progeny, almost 1,600 progeny there on Shigashigatani.
Okay, and so you have the sires, and then you have the males, which are the offspring of sires, correct?
Right.
That are younger, and
so then that would be how we would select the sires, and then you have to kind of go ask the question, well, is that semen even available? Can I get it? And so there's been pretty good amount of some of that semen that's come into the U.S. and that semen has been available. And now we're actually starting to produce some stuff here in the U.S. that is very, very, very high quality. So that's on the sire side. I don't know if you want to look on the female side. You can't, if that female's in Australia, you can't import it. The only thing you can do is you can import you can import an embryo. But that's not an easy process. So oftentimes you're seeing the breeders are taking their females and then putting the top sires on there to produce their own. But there have been a good number of embryos that have come in from Australia.
Right. And so I would like to talk about some female traits if we can, because I had an incorrect assumption and was just learned about, and that is the milkability on the of an animal on both, that category. And that I learned that milkability does not actually apply to an animal's ability to produce milk or the size of their bag or anything like that. Kenny set me straight, so I want you to share that with everybody as well.
Okay, that's a really good question on the milkability and EBVs, and that was kind of a question or concern that I had some of the early days, and maybe some of the top sires that didn't have good scores there. So the one thing on EBVs on milk is it's a derived trait. They can't actually measure it. So like they're not going down and measuring the size of the milk bag or the pints of milk that's coming off this cow. I mean, inherently Wagyu, they're not great milkers, but it's derived from the 200-day weights of the progeny. Okay. So it is an important characteristics, but it's not one that that I really look at really hard. The other issue is probably 80% of your calves are actually they're on an Angus recip. So that's my take on milk. I don't have a great answer. It's not. We have some data which is better than nothing, but it's not a direct measure of milkability of the female or the mama cow.
Okay, thank you. That really set me straight, because I used to look for that because I was, incorrectly assuming what it meant.
I mean, it's an important characteristics. I mean, as you want to improve the quality of the cow, and inherently they're not great milkers, but as far as I understand, it's not it's a derived measure from 200-day weights on the progeny.
Kenny, I'd like to know what trends you're seeing in the Wagyu breed over the years.
So there's some information that came out recently out of Australia, and I think that is kind of a good place to start and look at that information. And let me go ahead and share my screen, and we can look at some of those charts that we have on what's been the trends there, and this is going to continue into the future. So I talked about some of the main profit drivers. One of those is EMA, which is eye muscle area, and this looks back over a 10-year period from 2013 to 2022, and you can actually see that EBVs are actually doing what they should be doing, which is improving. If you breed for certain traits, then you should be able to improve on those traits. And you can actually see over a 10-year period on EMA, it's actually gone from a 1 to a 2.5. And again, remember, that's a relative value. But, if we get to 2023 or saying where's it going to be out here in the future, we should continue to breed for a bigger eye muscle area. And that's an important characteristic that drives those indexes that in terms of super sires that we talked about is, sires with higher EMA, and Bond is a great example of that, is going to drive a higher value, and you're going to want that in your herd. So that's EMA. The next one would be carcass weight. And so we can say generally over the last 10 years, so one of the things that maybe to the commercial cattle guy, he doesn't like the size, or he wants more of a bigger cow or bigger steer. But we can see that over a 10-year period, the trend in size has been up on carcass weight. This shows in kilograms, 6.6, which equates to about 14, 15 pounds average weight. And this is a derivative of size. So, but if we have bigger carcass weight, then, ultimately that's more meat and yield for the consumer. So that's carcass weight. And then the next one would be, we hit EMA. The next one would be marble score. So again, this is a great slide that actually shows 10 years ago, and I will point out this is for all animals. Over a 10-year, 2013 0.5, now 1.2. So slowly over time, the amount of marbling that is in the animal has gone up. And so probably we'll see this number when we get to January. This will probably be up close to be about 1.3. Now that's the average today. We are seeing some animals that are, you're seeing animals in the threes right now.
Right. I just want to say that, looking at carcasses as much as I do over the past 6 years, that I have seen a major difference in marbling scores and ribeye size just in comparing them year to year. And I want to say that the largest trend I've seen in the U.S. in carcasses is with our percentage cattle on marbling scores. In prior years, they never were up to par with full bloods, and now we're seeing percentage cattle actually cross that barrier and go into the higher marbling scores of full bloods as well. To a point, but I'm really seeing the quality of cattle in the U.S. just go up tremendously from year to year.
Right. Well, and so as we use better sires, then that's putting those genetics into the progeny. And so it is working in terms of driving the characteristics that we're looking for. The only thing when we talk about birth weight and the concern there, when you say, let's say we're driving bigger carcass, and one of the advantages of Wagyu is we say low birth weight is, well, if you breed them too large, does that drive you into having problems with birth weight? And you can see that it's gone up a little bit, but it hasn't been a problem so far. But that's kind of something that should be kind of looked at and watched, and in terms of, do we get animals that are too big? I know some of the United calves that I've personally had, they've been on the larger size, although we haven't had to pull any, thankfully. So,
what about Mayura? Because Mayura is a major growth animal. Have you seen large calves with Mayura? L10.
Yeah, on L10.
Yes.
I would say nothing that for me personally, nothing that sticks out. They have not been a problem. I'd go back and just say United. We've had a number of calves the last year, and the range has been anywhere from the low side 45, in the 40s, all the way up to 90 pounds. So, once you get to a 90-pound calf, that's a pretty good size calf. Now that's coming out of an Angus recip, but that's a pretty wide range
Mm-hmm.
on the birth weights. So.
So, Kenny, looking back at this chart and knowing, about marbling scores, where can we find these trends, if we want to look up the information over the years?
Okay, so in your breed plan report, and I'm going to switch over there. If you go to the very back, it's at the end of the report. So they'll report all your animals. But if you go in the very back, there's a report. I'm actually on page 19 that says all animals, and it'll show you the breed average EBVs over years, genetic trends, and when they do the what they consider averages, we're looking at 2021, which is right in here, this line. And so today that's made up about 32,000 animals. So
Wow.
this shows you for whatever index, the index or the character trait. So you can see back in 2009, the average marble score was 0.4. Now we're up to 1. They already know that the numbers for 2022, and there's still a few more animals that will be registered for 2023. But you can see what's happening marbling. They're breeding for marble. It's working. Marble scores are going up. Marble fineness is going up, and marble fineness is the snowflakes. EMA went from 0.6 all the way to 2.5. It's going to go to 3.3. So it's really, I want to say it's really arching up on eye muscle area. And then you can see same thing on carcass weights. When we talked a little bit about birth weights, it's been interesting to see birth weights don't really move much. Now this shows all animals, and what all. There's also some information in here that you have to dig to find it. And I made the same say, most of your animals are going to be females, and so you're going to look and say, oh, well, if I only have a marble score of 1.0, then I'm below average. Well, actually, they have a whole separate set of numbers for the females. And so if you come down to the next page, it actually shows the numbers for dams. And so for 2021, we said this number for all animals, I think it was like 32,000. Well, most of that, almost 26,000 animals, is the females. And you can say, look, the average marble score, let's say, and I'm going to blow this up a little bit, average marble score is 0.8. So if you were just looking at all numbers, you'd say, oh, she's 0.8. She's below average. In reality, for a female, she's not. Or if she has an SRI of, let's say, 135, you would say for all animals, it's almost like they really need two sets of numbers that say, hey, I'm only looking at females, so show me the numbers just for females, or if I'm looking at males. But they just default to all animals. But a lot of your female, just because they're smaller animals, they could be actually average or better than average, but because you're getting compared against the all animal index, sometimes they don't look as good. But this shows all the character traits, whatever characteristic you're looking, you can see they're bringing size, they're bringing marbling, they're bringing EMA as the breed progresses, and that's kind of why we say, the question, should I use the original foundation sire or do we use the sires today? It seems like the breeding is actually progressing the breed as it should be doing.
Right. And Kenny, I also found out that there is a trend, a chart of a powerful chart of our own herd. Is that correct? Where we can look at our herd.
Right.
separated and see if we're actually making a difference. I don't know that many people know this because I talked to a couple of other people and they, they had no idea, just like I didn't, uh, about it. I have trouble navigating anywhere. So, can you show us how to look at our own charts?
So again, this is going to be in your report, and you have to go to your portal on the Australian site. But so then what happens is for each character trait, they're going to have all your animals. They're going to list them out uh, with all the estimated breeding values. But then when you come to the section, they start to summarize that says, as you're making changes in your herd, as you're doing breeding, then you actually, and they only do it on a year by year basis, but you actually start to see. So this green line, and this shows, let's say, carcass weight. The green line was those same numbers that we were just looking in terms of genetic trends. And then the red is actually your herd. All right. Now this is by year, so it doesn't really change much on a on a month to month basis. But, if you said, where's your herd going to be in 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, you can actually start in your breeding decision that says, hey, if I do have low marbling, then in your sire selection, or I have small animals, maybe I want to start to bring in larger size animals to bring up my carcass size. I'll go down to the one that has a marble score, and you see it here in the red, which says, hey, my animals are below average on marbling. So then you can put into your herd higher marble animals, and you can see, and it will actually capture, the marble scores for your herd. So,
And so you're actually getting a correlation between what your herd is doing and what the average is of all Wagyu is that are indexed.
yeah, I mean, you're starting to see in your breeding decisions, are those good decisions? I mean, so it doesn't change much on a month to month, but you start to say a vector change, which is a small change, that you do today. Well, where does that take you 3, 5, 10 years down the road? And so you can
Right.
see, are you making progress? Is the quality of your animals, is the index of your animals? Now that can also mean because you're letting go some of the non-performers and, investing in your better performers. SRI, here's a good example of that. So, 2020 was the time that I made my change, right? I was actually below average, right? And so then you
Mm-hmm.
can see, since then, my numbers have been up and to the right. So, um, so that's where you want to go with your breeding.
Right. Well, Kenny, I've really enjoyed you explaining all of this, but I think it's important that we also let breeders know that, the genetics and these components are a significant part of the contribution to having a carcass of merit. But at the same time, I'd also like to say that you have to institute in your program a great feeding program and also great care for these cattle as well. And I also want to encourage people, of course, to use a carcass camera. You can, if you're interested in a carcass camera, you can check out meatimaging.com to get a camera here in the U.S. And Kenny, don't you agree that there's a lot of different things, but of course, the genetics, I would say, are probably 60% of it, and the feeding and care is 40% or maybe 50-50. What's
Yeah.
your take on that?
I mean, I would say, like, you had Jimmy on your last session. He would probably have a better idea in terms of what percent of the genetics. So the genetics are the building block, but obviously you have to have the feed out. of the animal and the care of the animal. So you can have something that's just average genetics, but if you knock it out of the park on the feed out, I mean, you're going to produce fantastic and beef there. So, but obviously, if you're starting with good genetics, then that's a good place to start. But you still, it's not going to get you all the way home, and you got to, you know,
A- And I do want to emphasize that it is great to have your beef tested like we do in the Triple Crown. And it's, it's great to keep track of your carcasses and keep track of your sires and dams, because many of these traits, as Kenny has told you, and as I have seen in the carcass, are heritable. And so to keep this going and have a great program, you need to know what kind of heritable traits are determining your carcass. And we hope you've enjoyed this. And I'm certainly going to be referring to the transcript. And maybe it'll cut down on all the calls you get, Kenny. I don't know. But thank you so much for being on the program. I have really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Desi. Thanks for having me on today. It was an honor. So.
Okay, and I wish everybody a great holiday and drive safe. Bye.